Now let me quickly recap how we construct these box plots. First of all, we compute the 5-point summary, and then what we do is we look at the minimum, we locate it on the ruler, and we mark down the position of that minimum. And then we do the same thing with the first quartile, with the median, with the third quartile, and with the maximum. Of course, in real life situation, this would be done a little bit more precisely, but this is the point, the main point. And then what we do is we connect the minimum and the maximum through a little segment with two edges at the end. And then we connect the first and the third quartile through a box, and that's why we call these box plots. And then we draw a line at the location of the median. So again, this is a box plot, and it gives us at the same time information about the median, which is an average, as well as variability, both through the range and the interquartile range. Great descriptive way of describing the data, all right? But where the box plots really shine is when we're trying to compare different groups. For instance, let's suppose that the box plot we just constructed came from a group of subjects, which we call G1. Now let's say we collect data from a second group of subjects, and this is the box plot that we obtain from them. Now you can tell very easily, very quickly, and very intuitively that this second group, in this second group, we saw data which were on average much higher than the ones in the first group. Now you can see also why I made my ruler all the way to 35. Even though the variability between the two groups, between the two box plots is pretty much the same, slightly different and not exactly the same. Of course, you wouldn't expect that, but certainly very similar in variability, but the second group much bigger median and therefore much bigger values. Now let's say we collect data from a third group, and let's say that this is what it looks like. Now notice that this time the median is lower, certainly, but what we observe very clearly are two more things. The variability is much different. This third group is spread out way more than the other two, and it's not symmetric. Notice that the first and the second quartile of the third group are shrunk together much more than their third and fourth quartile. In particular, it looks like the maximum of this G3 seems to be almost an outlier. It's very far off. Okay? So what happens is that in these comparisons, different averages and variability and outliers can be clearly visible. In fact, there are some situations where the outliers, there may be some outliers which are so outlying that we may want to identify them separately on a box plot. And people do that by either using little stars or little circles. So when you see something like this, it means that there is an outlier which is so far out that people didn't feel like including them in the box plot. There are actually some rules that people use in order to decide what is an outlier and what is not, but they're fairly arbitrary, so I'm not going to dwell on those very much. So some technical points about these box plots. They're also called box and whisker plots because of course the box is the part that connects the quartiles and the median, but then there are the two whiskers that extend to the minimum and the maximum. Also, in some computer programs, instead of using quartiles, they use something else called hinges. The idea is very similar. You're still pretty much looking for quartiles, but it's implemented in a slightly different way, which has its own technical advantage, which are really not much of something you can spend your time on. Okay. Sometimes box plots, however, are confused with something else called high-low close plots, and these are used especially in economics when they plot, for instance, for each stock what was the high and the low for the day and at what value the stock closed. These are different things though, so you may want to distinguish between them. In any case, what I would recommend is that you use these box plots, use them more, make them known to other people, and encourage them to use them because, as Tony would say, they are great.